Hello and welcome to the FilmSurvivor podcast. I am Tom Santilli, your host and film critic. I really appreciate you joining me here today. We're relaunching the FilmSurvivor podcast. This is our second episode back after like 6 months off almost. Can't believe it has been that long. But last week we brought you an episode where I spoke with some movie theater chains about what their plans were in this pandemic and what they plan to do once movie theaters reopen this summer. And this is part two of that episode. We are going to have a lot more today. On this episode, we're going to be speaking with representatives from Phoenix Theaters, the Film Lab in Hamtramck, as well as Cinema Detroit in Detroit, and MJR Digital Cinemas, of course. So strap in. We're going to be talking all about movies today in this edition of the podcast. I do know that Survivor is nearing the end, and we're going to have some really cool content coming in the next couple weeks to close out season 40 of Survivor as well. So if you love Survivor, if you love movies, this should be your favorite podcast. And again, I really appreciate your support in being here for all of this content. So let's just get right to it. Here's my first interview. We're going to start off with my interview with Eric Gubert, who is the marketing director at MJR Digital Cinemas. He was kind enough to join me a few days ago, and we talked and talked and talked, and here it is. All right, so I'm here now with Eric Gubert with MJR Digital Cinemas, marketing director. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me here today, Eric.
Absolutely, Tom. Thank you.
So just kind of clue people in, MJR theaters are, all over Michigan. They have a big presence. That jingle before the movie gets stuck in everybody's head, and, people love to clap along. It's kind of like this took on a life of its own.
Yes.
Give us a little bit of an update as to what's been going on inside of MJR during this pandemic.
Okay. I mean, obviously, like everyone, we're just, really trying to, make it through till we can reopen again. We've really been trying to stay in contact with all of our moviegoers through social media. We're continuing to post several updates daily on just anything from movie news or, some activities and stuff like that to keep people kind of busy. So one thing we did do a couple weeks ago was we posted our intro with with our song that everyone claps along to. And it was viewed about 20,000 times. So, people were, playing it before their movie night, and, people definitely miss us as we miss them. And so, we can't wait to, get back open. So
you know what, that I know it's talked about a lot, but that opening little jingle is such a thing, and it's so important. It's a symbol of this whole communal thing that we're missing. It's
right.
The idea that people clap along to it, and it doesn't matter where I'm at. If I go, I'm a film critic, so if I'm in a packed theater, or if I go to catch a movie on a Thursday night at midnight, there's always at least one or two people in the theater that give that clap at that one moment. You know what I mean? Like it's just a presence. It really is more fun at MJR, by the way. So
yeah, well, I agree.
So talk to us about what is going on here. As you mentioned, all the theater chains, big or small, have kind of had to adapt to the changing landscape of not only just the movie industry but of our country and the world.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see things headed for MJR? Have you been talking about when do you think you guys are going to be back? How things are going to look? Just kind of explain what.
I mean, ultimately, we're really just waiting on, when we get the go ahead from the governor, from the state of Michigan, as to when we can kind of move forward. But of course, we're talking about what we're going to try to. What to expect when we are officially given that green light. And, we're not just sitting on our hands. We're definitely, preparing for that moment so we can kind of hit the ground running once we get once we get that official green light. I mean, as to when, we're kind of thinking it's probably going to be closer to June when some of these businesses can start to reopen.
Yeah.
And then we'll just kind of have to go from there.
Yeah, there's been talk with that too, so not only do movie theaters, have to open, but they also have to have something to show. All of the big releases have kind of been taken off the schedule, I think, until like mid-July. That Christopher Nolan movie
Right.
comes out mid-July, and then there's, several kind of lined up currently after that. Um,
Hmm.
let's say you get the green light in Michigan to reopen in May even. Do you think MJR reopens? And if so, what will it be like in that interim period before you have any big movies? Will you be showing older movies? What kind of things would you have planned, or would you decide to stay shut till you have something to show?
I mean, I'd say we definitely would want to open, before we get to that point of having the new larger releases. Like you said, you mentioned Tenet and
Yeah.
Mulan supposed to be out in July. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely looking at, the studios are making a lot of films of their older catalog available to us. And, we are looking at programs and things, that we can, that are attractive to bring out people. I mean, such as, some big event pictures and comedies and even horror stuff like that. Marathons, back-to-back sequels. We're just going to kind of, we're kicking around some ideas and, nothing official to announce, but that will be, on the docket as far as the content. Because you're right, there is no new product for a while. So
You guys did that a little bit too. You guys had like the Flashback Cinema series, right, where you would show some kind of older movies anyway. So you guys kind of
yeah,
are used to doing that a little bit.
right. Yeah, every week we have our flashback series on Sunday and Wednesdays where we do play some classic films, and we're even going to be talking to them a little bit about how we can, ultimately bring back people to the show and do so safely. Obviously, I know it's going to be a little bit of a process getting people going again and out in public, and so we're going to do what we can.
As you know, over the years, like every couple years, every time there's a bad weekend at the box office, there's like articles. Is this the end of the movie theater industry? And nobody anticipated a pandemic, I don't think, but
Right.
hopefully, I mean, I don't see people long term giving up on the movie theater industry.
Well, no, and when there's good movies,
Yeah,
that's I mean that's been the case, for as long as I've worked at the theater,
yeah,
like you have, movies don't perform well, and then it's okay, then the next one comes out and does really well. I mean, it just,
yeah.
I mean,
And that's what's going to be weird. Somebody was joking online too that they said, the one good thing out of this whole pandemic is that the Oscars are going to be like 20 minutes long next year.
yeah, no, I mean, no, it's true. I mean, you take out, I mean, a big chunk of business. It's gonna be a long road till things really are, kind of back to normal as everyone's been talking. But I think also what maybe could happen is when theaters start opening up and we're at a certain percentage of theaters in the country, studios might even continue, every day you probably, as I'm sure you stay up on it, you see another movie's moved off
Yeah,
or moved in,
yeah,
or
sure,
things are just being shuffled
absolutely.
constantly. And so I wouldn't be surprised if studios do start maybe bringing a few more pictures into
Mm,
July and August, as confidence kind of improves, as I'm hoping it will.
that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. So basically, just because this is the schedule right now as we sit here on April 28th, it doesn't mean that when we get to July and August, it actually might look a lot more fleshed out.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I mean, and I'm hoping it doesn't change for
The
the
worse. Yeah.
negative, which I mean, because it's kind of nerve-wracking when you're sitting there watching the schedule getting, like
Oh yeah.
first
Oh
it was
yeah.
like, okay, mid-May was still there, and then they took Scoob out. It's like
Oh yeah. I get it. Yeah.
it
Absolutely.
just keeps shrinking. So
And if you can even speak to this, just because I have you here, and I might as well ask. There has been people have heard in the past year MJR was bought. Does that is there any effect long term or short term even that like the moviegoer, like are we going to see anything change? What's the from the consumer's perspective, is there any kind of changes in line at NJR or that were in place about to happen before this pandemic?
Yeah, no, I mean, not really. The company still has the key players involved. We're still run locally, from
Yeah.
our Bloomfield Hills office. So, they're we're all still here, and we might have someone else above us, but we're still the same company, and we still have, we're still doing the same thing. So that's we're not really looking to change anything major anytime soon. So
You said you've been with NJR for how long?
19 years.
19 years, man.
Yes,
So
yes,
on a
several
personal
different
level,
theaters.
how weird is it to not be in a theater? I mean, this has been your life.
You're right. Yeah, no, it's very odd. Every Friday, Saturday night, being in the theater and having weekends now has been very odd. But yeah, it's such a fun business. It's something that connects so many people, and everyone just has you know there's so many movies that people connect with and enjoy, and it's a fun thing to even just talk about, let alone kind of have as a part of your job. So it's been a ride these 19 years.
As the marketing director, I'm sure you are in charge of kind of the messaging that might come out of this moving forward. What do you
Hmm.
think are the main things that you want to get across to the movie going audience in regards to feeling safe going out to the movies?
Right, right. Well, ultimately, our first goal at MJR will be to, do things, according to what the current guidelines are. And so right before we opened, or closed rather,
Mm.
we had, went down to 50% capacity. So what that really involved was us basically checkerboarding our auditoriums, and we were only selling every two seats.
I see.
And then and so that obviously keeps people distanced and so forth. And then the other things moving forward that we're going to be trying to do are looking at staggering show times so that there's less traffic in our lobbies and in our common areas. That also will give us more time to thoroughly clean the auditoriums
Hmm.
before each show. I mean, I've seen people are worried about touching the buttons on the recliners and door handles, and we're definitely committed to staying on top of keeping all of these our condiment areas, and everything is going to be cleaned as we always took that seriously. But
Yeah, sure.
in these times is even more important to stay on top of. So um yeah, I mean, I don't think that people want to stay in their homes forever, and eventually they will start wanting to come out, and we're, like I said, we're going to do everything that we possibly can to make sure that it's safe, and that when the time comes for us to open, that we're going to follow every guideline and everything that we can to provide that experience.
On a wider scale too, that this whole pandemic is kind of being handled, regionally, state by state, depending on kind of where the cases are. With MGR being one of the larger chains, in Michigan especially,
Mm-hmm.
is there any? Do you see any sort of a regional approach to how things unfold? Like, for example, would an MJR closer to Detroit, where it's been, coronavirus has been more of a hotspot? Do you see those theaters having more restrictions or being, more handled than, let's say, one that's out in the, you know, country somewhere in Michigan?
Right. I mean that could have some effect. I mean, it just depends really, like I said, on kind of what guidelines we're getting from our local and state governments, and I think that we would just have to evaluate that at the time when the closer we get to reopening. Obviously that would be heavily considered, but that could be the case, that there could be some more restrictions in the theaters that are closer to where there are so many more cases.
God. And you mentioned earlier your social media and stuff like that. Where can people go to get updates from MJR and also to get that opening jingle?
So it is on Facebook.
Okay.
I'm at facebook.com MJR Digital Cinemas. We're also on Twitter, as well as on Instagram as well. So
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the people with, or let people know?
I mean, not in particular. I mean, but I definitely, we're we're working on getting back open, and we're going to have some fun things planned for everyone. And we can't wait to welcome everyone back to the movies.
Eric, thank you so much. I know if you're like me, you're busy. You have to give yourself your own haircuts and
Yeah.
things like that. So I know that
Right.
we both have a lot to do. So I appreciate your time and thank you again for joining us here on Movie Show Plus.
No problem. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, that was great. And next up on the agenda is Phoenix Theaters. Let's get into that. So, Corey, thank you so much for joining us here. I know things have been crazy for us all, but tell me, just kind of update people. It's been, as we're recording this, it's been over a month since the whole pandemic has hit our country and the world. What is going on with Phoenix Theaters?
Well, first of all, thank you for contacting us and
Sure.
asking us to participate. I appreciate that a lot.
Absolutely.
We've been just basically we closed our theaters and we are awaiting further instructions from a lot of folks to figure out how we're going to reopen our businesses and get back on track again.
Talk about the early days. How did this unroll? What were you hearing? How did it affect, the theater at first? Like, what was your initial reaction to this whole thing?
Well, we had probably a jump on this because the CFO of our company, Braden Allen, plays a game called Pandemic,
Hmm.
and he started to notice that the game was looking a lot like reality, and I think that started alarming him back in January.
Hmm.
So he started looking at the CDC websites and looking at the World Health Organization, and we actually had a meeting with our bank. We called them up and said, would you come to our office and sit down and have a conversation, which they did. And at that point, we sat down and said, we laid this all out. He has a degree in analytics from University of Michigan. So he had it laid out to say, here's where Italy is today, and here's where he predicted the United States would be in 2 weeks. And, I hate to say it, but he was totally correct on all of those assumptions. And the bankers left, I think, a little dazed after that entire meeting. And again, a week later, it was significantly worse. And I think after that weekend, we were literally the first theaters to close that we have. We have a location out in Massachusetts, and that was the first theater to close, and that was Sunday night, when we knew that was happening. And we started to put a press release together, and I had several days before that started to work on what that would look like, announcing that we were going to close our theaters because we thought at that point it was the responsible thing to do across the board. And we were about to push play on our press release, and then the governor got out in front of us by about 10 minutes and announced that they were closing, or that we were forced to close. So we said, okay, we don't have to worry about that. And then we did the same thing, ironically, with Iowa, and rewrote the press release for Iowa. And then that governor came out and said, well, we're closed. So at any rate, we tried our best to protect the public interest and do what we thought was right for our employees. And the government got there literally 10 minutes before we did. So it was kind of a
Well, you were being proactive. That sounds right.
We were very much proactive.
So you tell people who might not know a little bit about your theater chain.
Phoenix Theaters at Laurel Park Place in Livonia. We have the classic State Wayne Theater, which is our theater that was built in 1946. So it's seen a lot of things come and go in that time frame. That's in Wayne, Michigan. And then we have the Mall of Monroe Theater, which is in Monroe, Michigan, that has our premium large format Encore Auditorium. We have a theater in Iowa, which is at Kennedy Mall in Dubuque, Iowa, which is a fabulous city. And when everything reopens again, I recommend it as a vacation spot. It's nice to go up and down the Mississippi and you come see our theater. And then we have another theater that we actually opened last year, which is the Beacon Cinema, which is in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And Pittsfield is also a beautiful community up in the mountains of the Berkshire Mountains up in Pennsylvania. Excuse me, not in Pennsylvania. Mountains, Pennsylvania come in mind. in Massachusetts, and that is another theater that we have. So that's our 5 locations, and we have 36 screens.
Okay, great. So, what do you foresee? Obviously, there's a lot of things that we don't know right now, still in terms of what the future holds for, the industry. What do you think is the greatest challenge facing, from your perspective? What's the greatest challenge facing the movie theater industry moving forward?
Well, moving forward, we have to make sure that the entire country can open again, because this is, well, and for that matter, the entire world. We are a very international business at this point. Films, of course, if you make $200 million on a movie in the United States, your international number could be as much of that as it could be more than that in some cases. If you look at the billions of dollars that were made last year on Avengers, that is a good example of a lot of it was made here, but the worldwide total is really what pays for these films. And I guess the challenge here in this country is that you need New York and Los Angeles and Chicago and Dallas and Atlanta and Denver and Detroit and these big cities to be open for business again, so that films can be released across the country at one time. And I don't think that the studios, right now, what they've basically done is they've taken the release schedule and just kept pushing it back and pushing it back. And right now it looks like everyone feels comfortable with mid-July. I think July 17th is the, I don't want to say, what's the name of this picture? Tenet. Tenet is opening on July 17th.
Christopher Nolan.
With Christopher Nolan. And Christopher Nolan seems to be very confident of keeping that date. And Warner's seems confident about keeping the date. And then a week later, we open up with Mulan from Walt Disney, that's been moved around the release schedule to accommodate this situation as well. So that's all good news to see. And then the schedule has been dispersed in August and September and October, November, December, and even into next year. So I think that so few pictures, incidentally, have gone to video on demand. And I know that's always a big topic today, but it seems that the studios realize, particularly with the larger tentpole films, that the only way they're going to make the kind of revenue they need to make is to have the theatrical distribution. And again, it's a coupling. I mean, you've got worldwide theatrical distribution, and then you have the secondary markets, which are your home video markets and video on demand markets. And certainly there's a lot of money to be made there, but I think they can, if you add both of those two figures together, that's what's making films successful nowadays, just as it was when we were in the DVD world or videotapes.
Sure.
So the challenge is getting all these theaters open and being able to present things nationally and internationally at once.
And that's what's kind of confusing too, because as we do this recording again, it's been announced recently, like Georgia is going to be opening up sooner than other states, and included in that are movie theaters. But I heard that there was some pushback from movie theaters because, like you said, there's not even major movies opening until July. So, what would, if Phoenix Theaters was available to open up today, what would they be doing? Like, what would they be showing? Or you just decide to keep things closed until those movies start coming out in July? Like, what's the interim, short-term look like for movie theaters that do open?
I don't like that idea. I think that we need to let other businesses get out in front of us, in a sense that the public needs to have a sense of security about what's going on. And I think that I don't mind opening in July or late June to establish a little bit more community immunity, and also make sure that people are a little more accustomed to being out in public, before they try to take on any activities that involve group activities. And certainly it doesn't do us any good if we don't have any film to play. And you're not going to have any film to play until the studios can have some level of comfort that you're going to have New York and LA and Chicago, all these big cities involved. No one's going to release films of any significance on a regional basis.
Right.
At this point, I feel that for the safety of our staff and our customers, and also from an economic standpoint of view, that there should be no rush to get back into this. We want to do it right. We want to make sure that the theaters are clean, and we have our protocols in place to make sure that that the customers are aware of the fact that we're doing everything we can to create a safe environment. And I think we can do that, but it has to be very well planned out. I am, along with some of the probably other major exhibitors you're talking to in Michigan, we're part of a task force that NATO of Michigan, NATO is the National Association of Theater Owners of Michigan. We put together a group to study this and come up with plans that we can say that all of the theaters in Michigan that are NATO-based theaters, which is the majority of them, are going to follow these protocols, so that we all have a script and we know what we're going to be doing to make sure that we're meeting criteria that it satisfies health departments, it satisfies the state government and the CDC and other folks, that we're being responsible as business people and doing everything we can to make sure that we can ensure the safety of, again, our customers and our employees.
That's fantastic. That's great to hear, and that's good too that all the theaters are working together on it, because again, you don't want one theater chain doing something different than another theater chain, and then again, like, to the consumer, it seems very like a gamble on which theater you're going to go to or whatever. It's good to know that there's like going to be some unity and some commonalities in the movie going experience across the board. That being said, to a moviegoer who decides to go into the theaters at, let's say, in July or August of this year, what are some of the things that task force are tackling? Are you able to share anything with us like that? Like, will we be going back to full movie theaters? Will there be half capacity allowed in the theaters to allow for that social distancing? What are some of the actual changes you think that a moviegoer might see when they get to the theater?
Well, I think that also I would say that the National Association of Theater Owners is looking at all of these issues as well. And, once their guidelines are in place and our guidelines are in place, I think that we're prepared to do a lot of things. And it depends on what the condition of the country is and what the science looks like at that point. I believe that, certainly we have the capability. We just put in reserved seating in all of our auditoriums, which is really a nice feature, particularly now. We weren't expecting that this would come in handy, but you can literally break up the seats in the sense that you could leave a seat in between the seats that are available for purchase. And that way you can social distance people by utilizing the computer. And, again, the vast majority of theaters, literally in the state of Michigan, have that capability. So that's a big plus if you can do that. And even if the folks don't have that capability, I think they can find ways to block off chairs and do what they need to do to do that, if that's the case at the time we open. You really sit down and say, we've got all of May and all of June to really plan ahead. So you may have, it could be 10, 11, 12 weeks now before we really actually get open. And if you think about it, 12 weeks ago, we were living in a totally different world. So it's really hard to predict where we're going to be at that point. But I think that we're sitting around collaborating and discussing what all those potential problems might look like. And I think that from a customer standpoint of view, we just want to let everybody know that a lot of thought is going into this to make sure that that people can feel comfortable that all can be done and will be done to ensure people's safety and make sure they're comfortable with what we're doing, whether that's condiment stands, restrooms. Certainly a lot of people have recliners at this point that in our theaters, we would clean all the seats off with Lysol wipes between shows. Before all this happened, we've been doing it for years now, and we're one of the first that had recliners. But that's always been a policy because we thought it was really hygienic and in the first place. But I think that more attention to things like that have to happen. And again, it's a matter of seeing where we're at that point and what, guidance the CDC is going to give us, as well as our state and local governments as well.
And I know you're a busy man here, so I won't keep you much longer. But I have my final question for you is, and I know a lot of this, like you just mentioned, it's changing. It's interesting. You said 12 weeks ago it was a completely different world. So who knows? 12 weeks from now, the world will be living in. And
I was a lot happier 12 weeks ago than now, and I'm sure everyone else is too. It's kind of humbling in a way, because
sure,
this really kicked the blocks out from under everyone's lives. And but I was just listening to some musicians talk about the fact that they can't play, and you've got folks that are involved in so many aspects of our business and live theater and a lot of things that are being affected right now. And everyone is really expressing a strong desire to want to get back to what they love to do, and this is what we love to do. Yeah. I'm sorry, I interrupted your question.
No, but you're totally right. No, I'm a movie critic that hasn't seen a movie in in a theater since early March. It's unbelievable to me. But like all the uncertainty, though, I know that there's nothing you can say for sure. But what in your mind, on a personal level, what do you think, if anything, what permanent changes do you think we'll see in the movie industry, the movie theater industry, moving forward? Do you feel like, for example, we're going to see a common push for this, the social distancing in the theaters? Do you feel like more people are going to be watching movies at home? Do you think that this is going to, if there's always talk about the movie theater dying, and is it on its last legs, and is streaming going to take over the theatrical experience? And I've always personally thought that there's nothing that can possibly wipe the movie theater industry away. And then I've never predicted a pandemic, would shut down America. But I guess in your own mind, what do you think? Give me some of your personal predictions to the future of the movie going experience.
Well, it's funny that I had a really, really interesting and fun call this morning. There's an exhibitor who is up in Grayling, Michigan, as a single screen theater. And his great-great-grandfather opened this location, this movie theater in Grayling. It's a downtown area. And he opened it in like 1917 or 1918. It's been there for well over 100 years. And he said, now this is our second pandemic. and I was like, wow. And they have some of the advertising back then, and it says, we completely filter all of the air coming into the auditorium every 4 minutes. So obviously that was to address the Spanish flu. And you sit back and think about that and say, well, I think once you have the proper testing and go on in the country, and I think once you have, certainly if you have a cure for this, a vaccine, that people will get comfortable and they'll go back to their daily lives. And I don't think that our business is any different than going to a restaurant or a bar or other things that people enjoy doing when they're out of the house. And as far as streaming is concerned, I think it's an awful lot like videotapes or anything. I've heard, I started in this business over 40 years ago now, and I was just a kid. And I went to a meeting once in 1979 that there was a lot of discussion about the industry at the time. And someone got up in the back of the room and said, well, I've got some bad news for you. There's this thing called the VCR. It's going to be in everybody's house. There's not a lot of them out there, but it's gaining popularity. And, and once that hits, this is going to be a real problem for the theaters. And the person I was working for at the time, who was Ben Marcus, was an exhibitor, and they still have a terrific company out in Wisconsin. They're good friends of ours. He got up, and he's no longer with us many years ago, but at that time he got up and he said, people have a kitchen in their house and they still go out to eat. And he said, young man, as young man was asking the question, he said, do you have a girlfriend? And the guy said, well, yeah. And he said, so you're going to take your girlfriend into your parents' basement and watch the VCR tape? How's that going to work out for you? And everybody, of course, laughed. And I remember that. And that is been in the back of my head and been an answer to this question for 40 years. I mean, there have been people trying to bury us for a long time, but I think people have an intrinsic need to want to be together and want to experience things with one another. And whether that's plays, concerts, certainly movies. And if you sit in your living room and you watch any film, it's a very different experience than it is when it's in a theater. Not only because the picture's bigger, but people act differently. Even your family members come in and they drop a pizza off and they're talking amongst each other, and the phones are ringing. And you can just shut everything down and watch these films in your home and experience other people laughing or experience the reaction that people have to scenes that they watch. And that is a very special thing. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime in our lifetime. So I will leave you with that thought.
Well, I agree with everything you're saying. So I sure hope so. Is there anything specifically, if somebody watching this or listening to this wanted to find out specifically what's going on with Phoenix theaters during this pandemic, where could you point people to go? Are you guys active on social media, websites, that sort of thing?
We're on all the social media, and you can visit our website at phoenixmovies.net. And as things change and as we have more information, we'll certainly put them out there. There's a lot of ideas, kicking around our office about how to make things better and do things during this time frame. So I think you'll see some things happen in the next week or two to, keep people interested in what we're doing. And you know what? Everyone can't wait to get back. So hopefully we'll get everything back to normal soon. And I hope everybody has a safe time of it, until then. So thank you very, very much for taking the time.
And thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. That was great, fantastic talking with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've heard a lot from some of the bigger chains, not only here in Michigan, but across the nation, really. We've heard from MJR now and Imagine and Phoenix, just pretty much all the big players in Michigan, at least. But, there's a very important segment of the media, of the movie industry market that are the small theaters, the independent theaters. Those are ones that are legit small businesses that need support, and this has hit them very hard. I was happy enough to be able to chat with two of them in the Detroit area. One is Cinema Detroit, just a unique venue that plays all kinds of independent films. And then the other is a recently opened place called the Film Lab in Hamtramck. My show, Movie Show Plus, actually highlighted them back in December, January, and both places have a very unique perspective on what's going on. So I spoke with both of them, and here they are, one after the other, to give you kind of the independent perspective of what's happening with this pandemic. Well, right now I am very happy to be joined with Paula Guffett from Cinema Detroit. Thank you so much for taking the time. It looks like a beautiful day where we're recording today.
It is. Thank you, Tom, for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Paula, you were just alluding to this before we started recording, but this whole pandemic, yes, you run a movie theater, but you are a small business owner. I mean, you're not a movie chain. This isn't, this is having a direct effect on you, unlike it would like on an MJR or an Imagine. Talk to us, let people know, how have you been doing personally? How's the theater doing, and what have you kind of been up to since this all happened in mid-March?
As far as me personally with the pandemic, it's been rather strange. I do work from home some of the time, but as far as, not going to meetings in person, not being at the theater, we're there 3 days a week for carry-out concessions, okay, which kind of ties into what are we doing currently.
Yep.
Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, we're at the theater. We're gloved and masked, and we I bring the orders out to the picnic tables. If anyone's been there, they know we have a couple of picnic tables outside
Yep.
our stores. And I leave the order on the table. I go back into the building, and then people come and get their order, which is, strange to how we usually are giving our concession orders. We're also doing virtual cinema. So I'm still programming films that allows me to still curate some films. That's on our site, cinemadetroit.org/virtual-cinema. And we're applying for grants and funds for pandemic relief because we are a in-person business. We sell an experience, and that experience is in person. So it's kind of like if no one can come in, we don't have our main revenue stream.
Right.
So we're doing a lot of different things.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear, and you have to. I mean, you gotta figure it out. And we're all adapting to the normal or whatever you want to call it. There was news recently though that you guys received a grant. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
From Ava DuVernay's new
Yes.
foundation, the Ray Ascend
How cool.
Foundation, which we're very grateful to her for. That grant is a big part of our strength during this time. It's nice to be recognized for what we've been trying to do since 2013 is giving a venue for underrepresented voices in film. And a lot of what I try to do is provide a platform for people to become aware of anyone that isn't represented currently in the film industry by programming their films and having discussions that involve the entire community. So it was really, it's very meaningful. And for her to, myself and the 13 other grantees were invited to a conference before we knew we had the grant, and we got to meet Ava, and was cool. And she knows all about everything we do, which was cool. That someone who is involved at that level in the industry is paying attention to the degree that she is to the smaller operations.
And your theater is so amazing too, and so unique. Tell people a little bit about Cinema Detroit who may not be aware that you guys are even in existence. Just tell people who you guys are.
Okay, well, Cinema Detroit was started by myself and my husband. We're the co-founders. His name is Tim Guthett, and movies had always been a big part of our lives and our life together. So back in 2012, I came across a cinema cafe in Providence, Rhode Island, which sadly is now closed, but that's what gave me the idea for repurposing a space. Mm-hmm. It had been a cable car garage, and they had actually 2 theaters, and the projector was in the lobby, and they had a little cafe. It was really cool. And at that time, there was a lot of sort of empty industrial spaces in the city, more than there are now. And so we decided, hey, we could probably do this. Because one of the things that was frustrating is we stay on the east side, and there was, it can take, in the winter, 40 minutes to an hour to get to the theaters in Oakland County, which are great, but it was sometimes not feasible for us. So we thought, nobody's doing this in the city. Let's try it. So we started looking for a space, which was a little more complicated than we expected. There were a lot of empty spaces, but the ceiling heights were pretty low. Higher ceiling means a bigger screen, and there were columns, load-bearing columns, about every 10 feet at most of the empty spaces. And so that took a lot longer than we thought it would. In the meantime, we started doing pop-ups. We did a pop-up in West Village. We were at the Old Pony Ride in Corktown, and Jam Handy. We did a couple there. Okay. And so the response was pretty good. Like we were encouraged, but we just didn't know where we were going to do it. And it's we would lug a popcorn machine, projection equipment, and chairs, because if you're doing free to no cost, you know, provide your chairs. So our friends were suddenly all busy. Well, I didn't tell you the date. I'm busy, right? So I was like, okay, we need to cut that out and really look for a space. And someone tweeted us that Burton International School, that landlord was looking to rent. He had been running it and he was looking to rent it to somebody to operate it.
Okay.
And so that's how we got started in October of 2013.
Wow. That's awesome.
Thank you. I mean, we learned on the job a lot of the things we learned on the job. But one thing we knew is what we didn't like about some of the really big impersonal multiplexes. Like, no disrespect, just we wanted to do something different. So
well, it's like a niche. I mean, people that love film, you know, you're really providing films that can't be seen really, or you know, you're shining lights on films that need light shine on them. Like, these are not, you know, Avengers or Marvel movies that you know, these are films, and you know, it's just it's so important, and that's why it's so cool that you guys are figuring out ways. Now, in terms of that virtual cinema now too, my understanding on virtual cinema is there are people, by really doing video on demand at home, but doing it through your website, they're actually supporting you. Part of that, the proceeds go towards supporting the theater. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, and it's a little bit different to video on demand because none of the titles are available on other platforms.
Okay, sure, yep.
So we really prefer to say virtual cinema because it's something that we've kind of handpicked, that I've kind of handpicked, as opposed to throwing a lot of content onto a platform.
Got it.
And yes, they do support us, and we appreciate every purchase, every ticket. It's good because people have been really positive about making these available, and they get to watch something unique while supporting us. So you're going to be watching stuff anyway. Maybe make it a Cinema Detroit.
Right.
Virtual Cinema Detroit choice.
And is this, excuse me, this virtual cinema, is this something that will be kind of an ongoing thing? Is this like a stopgap till you guys get...
continue after we reopen?
Yes.
I'm thinking about it, to be honest, because one of my dilemmas as a programmer is having only 2 screens.
Yeah, right.
And so, and also by virtue of us being the only 7-day-a-week movie theater in Greater Downtown, we do show some mainstream things that we get requests for. Okay. And I want to serve the community in that way. So if something like, you know, Wonder Woman is on my big screen in Theater 1, and I have something else in the screening room, then maybe Virtual Cinema Detroit will offer me the opportunity to still spotlight some other films that are deserving.
Sure.
And I think, yes, it well may continue unless there's some sort of conditions change radically and it's not really viable for us.
More of a personal question, but just how has your outlook on your own business been since the beginning of the pandemic until now? Are you gaining optimism as we're getting closer to the light at the end of the tunnel? You know, again, you're just like all of us, or a lot of us anyway, you're a small business owner and are feeling the effects of this and are trying to adapt in every way you can. But I guess, where are you now from where you had been maybe a month ago?
A month ago, I was in severe panic. Like, I was like, what are we going to do? Oh my God. Yeah. You know, we adopted virtual cinema as quickly as we could. And that helped some, because that was you know, it was like, okay, I'm back into this groove. There's this thing I can do. Also carry out concessions, you know, extremely socially distanced all the time, but it was still something, you know, a little dose of normality. Yeah. And those 2 things, I think, really saved my mental health. Sure. And then as time has gone on, people have really reached out and let us know that they miss us and that they're looking forward to coming back. And so that's a really big encouragement.
Sure.
And we've gotten a pretty steady stream of donations, memberships, which means they think we're going to be here in a year, which is great because we think we're going to be here in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just confirmation of, what we believe, what we want. And so, I'm decidedly more optimistic now.
That's great.
Than I was a month ago. What day are we? 28th? Yeah. I mean, it was
tough.
You're always anxious. You're
Absolutely.
concerned. You don't have, the constant level of, money coming in all the time. It's really, yeah. But
what do you foresee changing with the movie going experience at Cinema Detroit? Like when things, quote unquote, get back to normal, is your theater taking steps to, with the social distancing and all the I'm sure everybody has a focus on cleanliness anyway, but just the overemphasis of it.
Right.
Just talk about some of the changes that people could expect, if they're going to Cinema Detroit once open.
Well, depending on when we reopen, it may be at half capacity, where people, it'll be like 2 seats between people who weren't quarantined together.
Sure.
We'll encourage people to bring and wear masks. And if you're not feeling well, don't come in. Mm-hmm. We had begun providing hand sanitizer before we even closed. Like end of February, we'll still do that. We stepped up our cleaning just more often. Every handle, every armrest, every cup holder, every surface. Obviously, concessions was cleaned daily anyway. Mm-hmm. More often than that. And bathrooms more often. I don't want to reopen until it feels safe.
Sure.
And until I think that it's safe for the majority of our audience. It's looking pretty good now. I believe the curve is being flattened in the city. We just want to make sure that it's the safest time that we can. And no, I don't have a date.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, but not to predict anything, but in terms of that, do you think? So what you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, is even let's say if they lift the stay-at-home order and you're able to open, you might choose to not be open right away until you have that feeling of security and comfort that your guests can experience it.
And until we can prepare to where we're comfortable and our community is comfortable. Mm-hmm. Like we don't want people coming in like, I'm not sure about this or whatever. We want to make it a really what's the word I'm looking for? Mm-hmm. We just want to make it comfortable for everyone.
Sure. I talked about the importance of Cinema Detroit. What do you feel is what niche do you really feel that you fill in the movie landscape in Michigan, in Detroit? Kind of just specifically tell people what you think, why Cinema Detroit is important and why people should, support if they can.
Well, we're always there, 7 days a week in Greater Downtown. Not only do we serve that community, but we're bringing all types of films to the metro area. A lot of our films are exclusive to the state or even the Midwest. And we really love movies. And I think that passion comes through in our operation. And absolutely everyone is welcome, even if you watch a movie twice a year or you watch a movie 10 times a week. I think we have something for all of those people, for the wide range of movie. No matter what your relationship is to movies, we have something for you.
That's great.
And we really, I really try in my programming also to emphasize, like I said, underrepresented voices, women, people of color, LGBTQA people, just anyone that isn't already in the film norm, which
Right.
is to say anyone that isn't a white male. Not that we don't show films by white males, because
Right.
we do.
Sure.
But I really try to, for instance, my 40% of my programming is directed by women. It could always improve, but it's better than the 4% of the top, I think for the last 11 years, the top 100 box office films, only 4% by women. It's about the same for people of color. Again, that could improve. We're working on more inclusion all the time. And I think we've also tried to build the film community, help filmmakers get their film seen, local filmmakers. We do short film block party every quarter. The next one will be in July. And it's, I think that's all.
That's good. That's a lot. What can you leave people with? If you could speak directly to the movie-going audience and your patrons at Cinema Detroit, what's directly would you like to leave them with, or address them in terms of the future of Cinema Detroit and what they can expect and that sort of thing?
We missed you guys.
Sure.
We miss you. We miss talking about films, and we're going to keep presenting them into the future as long as we can. Might look a little differently, and it might be more of the events that you like and less of just showing a film. Might be different formats, but we love films and we love the city, so we're going to be here.
Well, Paula, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Sure.
There's many cooler things to do on a nice Michigan day like this than to do a Zoom meeting, so I'll let you get off here and enjoy the weather, because God knows they're one every couple weeks.
Right.
But no, thank you so much, and what you do is so important, and I'm so happy to hear that Cinema Detroit is flourishing and is going to make it through this tough time. And where can people find you one more time? Can you throw out your maybe social media and websites?
Sure. So the main hub is cinemadetroit.org. You'll see everything sort of linked off there, virtual Cinema Detroit and carry out concessions. All the instructions are on there. We're on Instagram, Cinema Detroit, all one word. Okay. Facebook, just search Cinema Detroit. And then we're on Twitter as Cinema_Detroit.
Okay. Got it. Well, again, thank you so much, Paula, and best of luck to you moving forward.
Thank you, Tom. This is a fun chat. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So, Josh, thanks so much, man, for joining me here today to talk movies under these crazy circumstances. How you been holding up?
Doing good. Watching a lot of movies and just trying to make the most of the situation.
I think that's probably true for a lot of us, right? Just trying to make the most of everything. Tell us, though, give us an update. Last time we were out at the Film Lab, it was a different time then. It seems like a couple thousand years ago. But it was actually just in 2019. And we kind of were checking in with the Film Lab in Hamtramck. And you guys had some stuff going on in terms of receiving a grant. And you were redoing the upstairs, area of your theater. Paint a picture for us as to how the Film Lab was doing just prior to mid-March.
Yeah, we were open about 6 months over at the Film Lab in Hamtramck, so we were feeling good. We were making progress. As you mentioned, we'd received the $100,000 grant from the Knight Foundation to restore and renovate the upstairs into a 2-screen theater. The plans with that are still ongoing. Everything is moving forward with that, but unfortunately, due to COVID, obviously we've had to stop screenings in our micro cinema and closed down our bar, which was generating a lot of everyday revenue to keep the program going. But things were on the upturn right before this happened.
Now, as part of kind of catching people up with the whole, the effects of this pandemic on the movie going industry, you are unique, and I'm talking to some of the CEOs of major chains and things like that. You're unique because you guys are truly a small business. I mean, this is you do a movie theater, but you're a small business. Just kind of paint a picture for how this is affecting you guys, and I guess reassure people what the future looks like for you guys.
Yeah, obviously, like you said, we are a really small business. It's run by my partner, Lars Fire, and myself. We have 5 employees who help us sell tickets and make drinks and run everything over at the theater. So we are a super tight, small knit organization, just getting started, just getting off our feet, just working off all the costs that it took to get everything up and started. So our revenue was, of course, made through bar sales, concession sales, ticket sales, and that's all had to completely stop due to the stay-at-home order. So it's definitely cut everything off in that sense, but we've had a really supportive community, and we launched a membership program, and we've been selling ticket packs so people can buy like a 5-pack, 10-pack ticket for once we reopen, and same with the memberships, which offers different benefits. So people have been super supportive and want to see us be able to continue showing the amazing films from all over the world that we do. So I felt lucky that there's been such support from the community in that sense, that they want to see us really thrive and not let this closure take us down. And it's mostly just the uncertainty. That's the hard part. We don't know when we'll be able to reopen. And then once we do reopen, we don't know what the reality will be in terms of how comfortable people will be feeling about going out to the movies or bars or restaurants. So it's real uncertain until we know more about what's going to happen health-wise.
One angle of this whole thing, where you are maybe in a unique position, and I know you know about this because you deal with the distribution side of things. A lot of the larger chains are having this issue about, we might be allowed to open, in May or June, but we don't have anything to really show because a lot of the major pictures are not, they've all dropped off the schedule until at least July or beyond. Being that you show a lot of independent films, a lot of films that aren't seeing massive distribution, maybe positions you slightly better because you might be one of the only theaters in the short term that actually has content to show.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And also something of note is probably at least half of what we do is repertory programming, so films that are not new. So in that sense, it wouldn't change. We would still be able to do the series that we do. We were just doing in March a Women in Film series that had a film Daisies from the Czech New Wave that we weren't able to show, and a lot of other really great films that were on our calendar that we didn't get to do, and we'd still be able to do those eventually once we reopen because those aren't reliant on new releases. But yeah, in terms of new releases, we're not reliant on blockbusters. And we work with a lot of really great small distributors who have a lot of content that they want to get out there, and they're not expecting yet to be in these giant multiplexes anyways. So it might not affect us in the same way. And the distributors have been really supportive. A lot of them have launched virtual cinema programs. So it was content that was maybe in the process of being released when the shutdowns happened, that they were able to put the content online, and they are able to kind of connect it to different local art house theaters. So you can come to like the Film Lab, and when you buy a ticket, it supports us in the same way when you would buy a ticket in person. So every theater has their own individual link. So it's kind of VOD, but it's a new concept in that you're actually supporting the theaters, and it's a 50-50 split of tickets, similar to what it would be in person. So they've been really generous in offering that up, content, like I said, that was about to be released. And then they're offering new releases as well. So it's been really, that's been a really fun thing to do. And it's actually allowed us to show more movies than we would have, and a more diverse content than we would have if we were open. So it's a new world, we're adjusting to it, but really feel grateful to the distributors for working with us in that way.
That's fantastic, and I've seen that on a lot of your social media. This concept of virtual cinema, which I think people are starting to kind of. There's a curiosity as to what that means at first, but to hear that they're still able to support the local theaters, I think is a big big draw to why people might want to try this out. Is that talk a little bit there in terms of where do people go, right now to support the Film Lab? Would they show up to your website? Is there a specific way that they would get access to these links?
Yeah, if you show up to our website, there's a link for the virtual cinema, and all the titles are listed there. Right now, we're releasing 3 new titles every Friday, and they stick around for 2 weeks each, so you have a good amount of chance to catch them. You can see them there, and then we also have links for our memberships, donations, ticket packages, all the different ways that you can support us to continue supporting the arts community, both here in Hamtramck, Metro Detroit, and the larger art cinema world that we support as well.
Yeah. I was gonna say it's impossible to predict, what things, how things are, a couple weeks from now. Even, we look back 6 weeks ago, our lives were a little different. But looking forward, have you put any thought? I'm sure you have, into some of the things that you might have to change in terms of, adopting to, social distancing within the Film Lab. Talk a little bit about what you guys plan in terms of, or what the movie going audience might be able to expect, in the future at the Film Lab.
Yeah, I mean, we're still waiting a little bit to hear what the guidelines are for reopening, but certainly, yeah, social distancing, I think, will still be a thing once people are able to start slowly going back out into public. So I think we're looking at kind of adjusting some of our seating. And if you saw the piece before that we did with you, we're not a regular cinema, so there's not rows of seats.
Right.
We're set up more with cafe tables and chairs. So kind of maybe reconfiguring the seating a little bit just to give people a little bit more space. And then also just kind of upping cleaning procedures and figuring out just how to make everyone have a safe movie-going experience as possible. Probably encourage people to buy tickets online so we're not exchanging money and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Do you foresee the virtual cinema thing being a temporary kind of stopgap, or do you kind of think that that's a thing that might be here to stay moving forward?
Yeah, I'm actually really interested in the concept of it moving forward. Like I said, it allows us, a really small micro cinema, to show more films than we would normally.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see that in a case where maybe we don't have a chance to bring it to our micro cinema. But since we only have 1 screen, and multiplexes sometimes have 12 screens, so they're able to show a lot more films. So maybe there's a movie we really wanted to show, we didn't get the chance, and we can show it in our virtual cinema and offer it to our audience to watch at home. Or the other way that I think it could really be beneficial for us and cool is, normally we only show movies for 1 week at a time. So let's say someone wasn't able to make it out that week for whatever reason. Maybe we could show it in a virtual cinema for the following week, and gives people another chance if they missed it in person, that there's kind of an exclusive window where you see it in person, and if you missed it there, maybe you'll still be able to watch it from home and still be able to click through the Film Lab link, and it's supporting us in the same way as if you were coming in person.
As a movie lover yourself, kind of if you can take a step back, even being an owner of the Film Lab, what's your feelings on this and how it will affect the movie industry moving forward? Do you feel like are you optimistic that things will rebound? Are you feeling that there will be any other things or changes that people aren't kind of foreseeing at this point? Just what's your personal take on everything that's happening?
Yeah, I think it will be really interesting to see how it shakes out. I know a lot of the studios, both large and small, are kind of using this period as a testing ground with some of the larger releases that they're doing at home, Trolls 2, and now they just announced that the Scooby-Doo animated movie is going to be coming direct to people's houses. So I think if they'll see that those grosses can kind of equal what theatrical is, I think they'll maybe start reevaluating their plans for the future in terms of box office. But there's always going to be filmmakers that insist that their movies get released to theaters. Christopher Nolan, whose movie is the only one on the calendar still for the summer in July.
Yep.
I think people like him will always insist that their big blockbuster releases go exclusively to cinemas, and oftentimes in 35 millimeter, 70 millimeter. So I think we're still going to see the theatrical experience survive. But as you've seen in the news, a lot of theaters are struggling with bankruptcy, some of the larger chains. So it's definitely hitting the industry hard on both sides. And obviously all the productions that were in production had to stop. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how the calendars shake out with that as well. But I believe wholeheartedly in the theatrical experience. And I think people will, especially after they've been at home for so long, once it's finally might take a little bit of time, but once it's finally safe and clear, I think people are going to be happy to go out to the movies again.
That's really been it's a good point, and it's something too that has, been nice to see. Maybe one of the silver linings of this whole thing is people's support for small businesses. I think people really understand, the effect that it's having on the small businesses. Just talk about the community. You said you have a lot of community support. Have you felt that that backing from the local community? Has that given you confidence that things are going to eventually be okay for the Film Lab?
Yeah, there has been really great support, both in terms of people who've given donations, who gave memberships, and I know it's a tough time for everyone in terms of spending dollars, but if people have kind of voted with their dollars and have supported us in these really wonderful ways, both in terms of forward thinking of when we can reopen and things they can redeem, and then also with the virtual cinema, and kind of there's a lot of streaming options out there, but people have been going with the offerings that we've had, so that's been really nice. And even like the mayor of Hamtramck is kind of like posting every week that she's watching our movies at home and sharing it with with her following. So yeah, it feels really supportive in the local Hamtramck community and the greater arts community. And right now we're part of the Freet Film Festival that's happening virtually. So that's another really nice thing where all these different arts organizations, film organizations are kind of coming together and working on this project. So it's just a nice community in terms of people to business, but also business to business and other movie theaters in town, how we can all support each other in this time.
Well, Josh, you have a big fan in myself and Movie Show Plus. The minute I even discovered your guys' Film Lab, I was very prone to want to be very supportive of you guys. So I wish you nothing but the best through all this, man, and hope you can stay strong and that people flock 6 feet apart, of course, to the Film Lab once we're able to.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right, man. So there you have it, everybody. Again, I really appreciate everybody. Hi, those of you who are watching or listening to me on this FilmSurvivor podcast. It's really cool to just be connected with you guys during this time. We're all going through some tough times, and things like movies, things like Survivor are all things that help us get through this thing. And I just hope everybody's staying safe and healthy. Stay tuned, though, on this podcast. We have some really cool stuff coming up in the next couple weeks. I don't want to give it away, but we will have some new episodes coming up. Hopefully more Survivor-centric as we get closer to the finale here mid-May. Might have some interviews. Still checking with CBS to see if I'm going to be in on the exit interview circuit or not. So I'll let you know on that. Might be speaking to some other people. Don't want to let the cat out of the bag on that either yet. But again, you can follow me on all of my content on Twitter at Tom Santilli. You can subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already on Podbean or on iTunes. I appreciate your support there. And we have a Facebook page for the FilmSurvivor podcast. You can check out my show, Movie Show Plus. No matter where you live, episodes are available all over the place because we put full episodes up online. So you can go to movieshowplus.com. It's all about movies. I have written movie reviews. I'm a film critic, so there's years and years and years worth, about a decade's worth of movie reviews up on the Movie Show Plus website as well. So that'll do it for this installment. I appreciate everybody tuning in to hear from these movie theaters. I think it's so important. I hope that you go out and support your local movie theaters and abide by the guidelines when you're able to. And let's try to get this thing back to normal or as close to normal as we can. That'll do it. Again, I'm Tom Santilli. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time on the FilmSurvivor podcast.